Today is Tuesday, December 12th. To my left is my good friend from Hyde Park, Tim McCarthy. We are here regarding docket 1461, message and order approving appropriation of $285,393 for the administrative and operating expenses of the City of Boston Community Preservation Committee for fiscal year commencing July 1, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018, and further ordered $17,894,608 to be appropriated and reserved from the City of Boston Community Preservation Fund annual revenues for further appropriation for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2017 and ending June 30th, 2018, upon the recommendations of the Community Preservation Committee. We are also joined by Budget Director Justin Sterrett and our newest member of our staff, for the city staff, Christine Puff. Thank you. And let me just also, for the record, remind folks that this is a public hearing, that it will be both taped and broadcast live on Comcast Channel 8 and RCN Channel 82. Ask folks in the chamber to silence their electronic devices. At the conclusion of the presentation and question and answer period, we will take public testimony. There are sign-in sheets to my left by the door. Please state your name, residence, and any affiliation. And with that, I will want to turn it over to our Budget Director, Justin Sterrett. Thank you.
I'll actually let Christine speak.
Great,
thanks. So my name is Christine Poff, and I'm, as you said, the new Community Preservation Director, and I live in Jamaica Plain. Do you need my address?
No, that's okay.
Okay, good enough. Yeah.
No, you're a Boston resident.
I've lived there for 25 years, in the same house. Anyway, just to start, what we've done for the community, there are two budget pieces for this hearing, and one is actually the appropriation for the amount of money that the city is collecting through real estate taxes, it's not a tax, but the extra allocation, and the other is for administrative costs. And the administrative costs, the state law allows that up to 5% of what is collected can be spent on administrative. And we have created a budget that's about 1.6%, which means that anything left can also add to the project budget, which is great. And I don't believe, once we're fully staffed and have the administrative services and support that we need, I don't believe that will go up anytime soon. What's involved in that administrative piece is 3 staff, including myself, 2 others, that remain to be hired. One will be for project management, and one will be for community outreach, and making sure that there's a lot of civic engagement around the community preservation expenditures and funding. We believe deeply that this is a program that was voted on by residents of Boston, advocated for heavily, campaigned for by voters of Boston. And so I hope, and by advocates from the 3 areas, affordable housing, parks and open space, and historic preservation. And so I feel and I think the city feels very committed to making sure that it's a transparent process and one where there is real civic engagement. And that's why we need a team of support to both manage the projects and make sure that we're engaging as much of Boston as we can who are invested in the CPA.
Just for the record, again, I want to also give credit to our members here, and especially Councilors Flaherty and Andrea Campbell, who are unable to attend today, but obviously send their support. And also to remind folks that tomorrow the council will be voting on the remaining nominees for the CPC.
Right.
So I just wanted to get that on the record. And while I'm saying, I want to welcome to the chamber at large City Councilor Anissa Asabi George, birthday person.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
So go ahead.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Wow. So we can answer questions about any specifics in the budget, or how there were some questions before we started about the. Do you want to?
Okay, yeah,
announce
that's
that
okay, I'm
Councilor
sorry.
Baker's here.
I want to recognize my friend from Dorchester, District 3 City Councilor Frank Baker, too. Sorry about that.
Great.
Sorry.
There were questions about the state match. Would it be helpful if I,
Well, you know what?
or why don't you ask
Since we're
questions?
taking the administrative part first, why don't we go there first?
Okay.
Three staff people.
Right.
All full, part-time,
full-time?
all full-time?
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah,
the
and we
full-time
hope that
the
they'll be
outreach
hired
staff.
quickly.
Right.
And
So-
they
we
will
have a
work,
breakdown.
especially the community outreach manager will work closely, I hope, with city councilors. We're already organizing a meeting with City Councilor Andrea Campbell's district, and I'm working with her staff closely, and Councilor Asavi George and I have talked about, I've talked with Councilor McCarthy, I just talked to you, Councilor Sioma, because I think you will be very important and helpful in making sure that the civic engagement piece is strong.
Right, yeah.
So we hope we'll work through your offices to make sure people know about community forums, that we are doing them in all the individual districts, and touching base with, and so that you hear the input and what's a priority for your constituents
So
also.
at this point, I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any additional questions about, it's one docket, but since this is a separate amount, if anybody, Councilor McCarthy, questions
just-
about staff?
Just really logistics. You're going to have 3 full-time staff. You're going to be housed here in City Hall?
No, actually, I'm currently housed at 26 Court Street, and they will be housed there also. It's just, there's more room and conference rooms available and
Okay.
things like that.
And they're full-time City Boss employees?
They will be, yes. They'll be middle managers, non-union.
Okay. That's it.
Councilor Sabi George?
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Chair. Would you just describe very quickly, you may have done this already, I apologize for coming in late, what the 3 staff members, what their job titles are?
Sure.
And just a snippet on their roles.
So one of them is me, and I was hired
Oh,
as
so
the...
there are 3 staff members, including you.
No, there's 3 total. I'm
Yes, okay.
one, and then the other 2, one is going to be a project manager, and one will be a community outreach manager. And I do envision that it'll be a real team, and that we will all do a little bit of everything, but the project manager will be more in charge of the projects coming in, connecting with the applicants. We expect applications that everything from an organized CDC that knows how to write a proposal, knows how to put a budget together well, to a handful of community members who want to see their park fixed up, who may need support and technical assistance around getting a design, working with the Parks Department, figuring out how to do this. And so that project manager will help support all of that process and organize the applications, et cetera. And then a community outreach manager who will do what I was just describing, really working with city councilors and working with advocacy organizations and groups to make sure that we set up some community forums every year to gather input, review project ideas, review what's needed in different neighborhoods. I anticipate what South Boston needs versus Hyde Park will be different. And we want to make sure that the Community Preservation Committee has input from different neighborhoods in terms of what a neighborhood's looking for and what people turn out to, say, identify as priority projects, identified needs, what their dreams and ideas are for this money every year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Great.
Council Baker.
Good morning. So you said that the project manager will connect on with CDCs and community people. Is this money going to be available to private developers, or are we targeting the CDCs and the people that...
Great question. The state law allows the money to go to whoever applies, and so it can go to a private for-profit. It mandates affordable housing. So, for instance...
But I mean, you could be building something, and there could be a good transportation sort of parkland that may abut any sort of development. Would that be open to them?
So when you say transportation,
So-
that rings a bell for me because...
So hang on a second.
It's got to be a
Hang on.
capital project.
Capital,
related to parks and open space, historic preservation, or affordable housing. So it could be like a vacant land next to an affordable
To a
housing
develop-
project that maybe could connect to a park or be a link, but it would have to be considered green or open space.
yeah, so.
It can't be
so
a bike lane.
It can't be a bike lane.
It could be a bike path, because that's open space, green space.
Okay, so
But a
bike lane
is
being on a
is
street, but if we had a
Right.
dedicated bike path,
Right.
that were, okay, so something like ink block, say there was an opportunity to do, like under the highway there, would that be, would this money be available to them, or?
It would be. That's considered open space, and
Okay.
it's used for open space purposes, community gathering.
Because I get a little bit concerned that we're gonna focus on just the CDCs, the people
Right.
that are getting a lot of money now.
Yeah.
I think we have to start thinking a little differently about how we work with, people that aren't CDCs.
Sure. No, I think absolutely. I'm using CDCs as an
Yeah,
example, but
yeah.
Trinity Financial might be doing a project or a development organization that serves a mixed income population, and we could give them funding to make, right now they're required to have 10% of their project for homeless or recently homeless. We could give them CPA funding to make it 20%.
Yeah.
Or we could, if they have so much market rate, we could give them funding to bring that down to 60% of AMI. Anything that's under 100% of AMI, area median income, would be eligible as affordable housing.
And is it on you to set up the process of how the application process is?
It is.
Has that been set up yet?
So what we're in process of doing is, I have a small team with 2 interns, because I didn't have staff, who are coming from graduate policy schools in the city. And they're helping with one housing person, because that's just the more complicated piece. We're putting together the community preservation plan. And that's required under the state law to have a plan every year. And this inaugural plan is clearly the most important, because it can just be tweaked every year. And it will include some guiding principles, and it will include directions for how to apply. It will include rules about what's eligible and what isn't eligible. And a draft is very close to completed. And that draft will go up on the website. I'm hoping by the first of the year at the latest. And there'll be a button on the website that everybody can weigh in and make comments and give input. And then it will be approved and voted on by the actual Community Preservation Committee. And the more input they have about what people like and don't like about it and how they feel about it, the better. And then you had a second part to the question. The RFP process. So that's my next task. Is I have looked at the request for proposals for many different city agencies and projects, from the more complicated D&D proposals to small grants that are given to Charlestown that come from, I'm not sure where the money comes from, but it's some kind of Charlestown community benefits. And we will have something in the middle. And it will be, and it will have clear steps for how to apply and how to get assistance if you need it. I really see my role as a linker. If someone comes with a little park, I'll certainly check with the Parks Department. I'll see if someone from design and construction can work with them. I'm interdepartmental because we cover 3 different buckets, and I'm committed to the community piece, which very much involves the counselors. So, we'll provide whatever support we can. And on the administrative budget, you may notice that there's some items for contract staff that will be consultants that will be hired as needed for both project review, if there's a complicated budgetary thing, or a landscape design that needs to be looked at, and also to help support that small group that might be coming to develop a playground in their neighborhood at a vacant lot, and a consultant could work with them to create design for that. And with some Parks Department input, some Might be D&D, the grassroots program, how to dispose of that lot. You know, there'll be a lot of moving pieces.
So through the chair, maybe we can get, when those processes are finalized, maybe we could, again, through the chair, you could send that to the city council. And my last question on the staff is, have you started the interview process? Are they going to be people from inside the city now that work with us now transferring over to you, or do you think there'll be new people?
I have no idea. And so I've been going through the...
Have you started the interview process yet?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm eager, very, very eager, but there's a lot of steps to go through for hiring. So, and the budget was one, and Mary in the budget department has really been helpful. And I've been through one round with the HR department, and now I'm going through the next group of checkoffs. And I mean, my dream would be, it would be posted before Christmas. But
That would be your Christmas present?
that would be my Christmas present so much, exactly. So, but I think it may be early January, and it will be open to absolutely people in the building, and it will be posted for 14 days externally.
When do we think, that this will start actually giving money to projects? Will that be like mid-year next year, or?
So I have
sooner?
I have a calendar sort of created, and it just depends on when the Community Preservation Committee can all get together and be present. There's a lot of training pieces that have to happen first. They have to understand CPA and what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and there's a nonprofit community preservation coalition that will come and do that. There are some legal trainings about open meeting, ethics, the public record law, those kind of things. So the first couple of meetings will be that kind of work, because, you know, community members especially don't know those processes.
Yeah.
Some of the members from commissions and boards will know them because they had to do it to be on the Landmarks Commission or the BPDA board. But so there'll be some work. I'm hoping that an RFP can be, and they have to approve the community preservation plan and tweak it if they choose to, and they have to approve the RFP process and tweak that. I'm hoping an RFP will be out by March 1st. And that will be 2 months of work before, and then, you know, we'd love it if applicants could reply in a week, but I'm not expecting that. So we're hoping to give them 4 to 6 weeks to apply, and then there'll be the review process. I do have what's going up on, as soon as the Do It technology folks are done, a letter of interest for project applicants, and that will go up on the website any day. And it's a really simple one-pager.
So that'd be a way for us to start gauging who may be in line.
Absolutely. And I'm starting to create an email list of who needs to hear about these things, and you're all on it, and your staff are on it. So I'm hoping that you would distribute the link to that letter of interest form to all of your constituents on your list.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
One wrap-up question, I hope, on staff. Do you have one? Do you have job descriptions yet? Have they been
I do.
finalized?
Yeah.
And are they posted anywhere?
It's not posted yet, but they will be posted once the process, the HR process is concluded, which would be my Christmas present that you're hearing about. Yeah.
All right, great. Anybody else on
And
staff?
I could share a draft. I just wouldn't want it to be publicized
that's
in
okay.
case we're not quite there yet.
Okay.
They need numbers, they need codes, they need all kinds of, yeah.
Okay.
Great.
So, Justin, do you want to speak to the
Yeah,
other
absolutely. Thank you.
piece?
I'll take a little step back from the great details of Christine's work. So we started collecting the surcharge on the assessment or on the property tax in July of this year. So we've already collected essentially half of what we think we're going to collect for FY18. The reason that we're moving forward today with both the administrative budget and reserving the funding for appropriation later in the year is we need to do that prior to setting the tax rate for the rest of FY18 according to DOR regulations. So we're setting the tax rate right now. We should have that finalized at the latest by the end of the month so that when we send out third quarter and fourth quarter taxes, this will be inclusive in that. The $18 million is what we think is a very conservative estimate. We're finalizing what the opt-outs are, or anyone that sort of that doesn't have to pay the assessment. And I think taking a bigger picture look at the process-wise, essentially what will happen is the CPC will come up with their recommendations. They'll then come back to the council to then vote on appropriating the money to those specific projects. So this is really just setting the stage so that we can start to sort of put the money in the funds, get Christine's office up and running, and then they can really start diving into the process. I think ideally, we need to have the money allocated sort of as soon as possible so that, in the best case scenario, we have funds available at least to appropriate in FY18, because if we don't do that prior to tax rate, we won't be able to actually fund any projects for this year.
Right. So, and to that point, just for the record, I had some apprehension about appropriating such a large sum without actually having any proposals, but to my colleagues, we will have another bite at the apple, if you will, when projects are presented to us for another approval and appropriation.
Yeah,
So that gives me a little more comfort on that.
Yeah, the way the state law works is the committee makes recommendations to the mayor, and then the mayor
Right.
sends those recommendations your way. And so I would imagine that this is where the hearing would be on the projects, and we might have project proposal applicants present if that was helpful.
Right. And the percentages that we have to spend on open space versus, could you just, for the record?
Do you want me to do that? Yeah. So just like 5% can be spent, or up to 5% can be spent on administrative costs, 10% must be spent on each of the three buckets. So 10% on affordable housing, 10% on historic preservation, and 10% on parks and open space. The interesting thing about that is looking at other communities. Some suburban towns don't want affordable housing, and so they just let that money accrue year to year. Other towns are very interested in buying land and conserving it, and so they've done their 10%, but then the remaining 60-70% has all gone to buying open space. So Boston will be a much more interesting, I think, even-handed place for all of this. Yeah.
Right. So to that point, especially the affordable housing piece, so minimum of 10% each year.
Right.
Each calendar year or fiscal year.
Oh, that's a good question. I am thinking it's fiscal because the state fiscal year runs on the same.
Gotcha.
And the state doesn't really, they just want to know that
Right.
they don't, the other thing about the DRO reports, they don't care about blended projects. We have talked a lot about, wouldn't it be great to restore an old building that would be historic preservation and make it affordable housing, or an historic thing in a park, but they ask you to pick a bucket, so I know reporting will figure that out.
That might actually be 2 buckets.
Right, which would be great.
Gotcha.
Oh, nice.
Do you have any estimates to date, Justin, on the receipts, the actual receipts from July 1 to almost December 31st, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wouldn't want to put a number out there publicly, but I think it's fair to assume we've collected about half of that 18 million, no less than that, because that's what we're projecting for the full year.
Okay, and when you have a more hard number after
Absolutely.
after the
Yeah,
first
essentially we're
half
waiting.
of the year, if
Exactly.
you could send them around,
Absolutely.
I'd appreciate that. If I recall correctly, during the whole CPA debate, we were always estimating the $20 million, which would include a match. So this is actually seemingly a lot more.
So we're projecting $18 million sort of in the first year.
Right.
I think the match would be on top of that. Christine could probably jump in
That's
right.
on how much we're projecting.
The match actually doesn't come until the second year.
Oh, okay.
And so we'll get 2 years of match in 1 year.
What's the percent match that they've
So it's gone down
this year.
significantly, unfortunately, over the years. So now we're expecting in FY19 that it'll be 11%. So we'll get 2 years of 11% because we'll get our current year. So we'll get 20. We'll get it'll be a little bit of a boom, that first time that we collect it, and then it will go down.
Right. And it was, up until last year, about 20-something%.
It was in the high teens.
High
But
teens, right.
there's a bill before the legislature that we're all following closely that would raise the transfer, the fee that people pay in the as a transfer tax in the Office of Deeds when they buy property. And that's what creates the Community Preservation Trust Fund for the state. And that currently, and has been for 17 years, only $20. So if we could get that closer to $40 or $50, then that match could go back up again.
All right. And then just to request the letter that you showed me from DOR, just to provide to my colleagues so they understand why we need to appropriate this now versus after the projects are presented to us for approval. And that's it from me for now. Councilor McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. More of a point. Christine, you mentioned some towns are accruing their affordable housing and not spending it because they don't want affordable housing. Isn't that, when we pushed for this, some of it, different people are concerned about different things, clearly. But isn't it really against the spirit of the CPA to hold that money? And how do towns get away with it?
There's not that much oversight. It's very flexible. And no, but it absolutely is. That's not going to happen in Boston.
Yeah, no,
There's no way.
I understood that, but it just, okay. And then secondly, can you just kind of walk me through the actual process of projects? Because I know that I've got one in each of my, I have one in Hyde Park, one in Mattapan, one in Rosendale that I've already started kicking around in my own brain and kind of talking to people. How does the process start?
So what I'd love is for those projects to submit the letter of interest. It's a really simple one-page form. And even if some of the instructions on it will be, if you don't know like quite what the total project will cost, still submit that form. And you could always add to it and update it. And then on March 1st, a more detailed, the community preservation plan, as soon as it is approved, will be up on the website. And that will have some guidelines. It will have things like we strive to meet or exceed the Boston Jobs residency. Make another guideline that we've got drafted in it is meet underserved needs, try to address inequities, some language like that. There'll be some priorities for each of the 3 areas. Pay attention to a growing and changing population under parks to make sure that parks keep up pace with neighborhoods that don't have enough because the neighborhoods are changing or expanding. So there'll be, that community preservation plan will be available for people to read before they put together their project proposals, and they'll have a sense of what the committee will be looking for because they will have approved that plan. And then there'll be an RFP with very specific instructions for how to submit an application. And there'll be a checkoff box. We'll be looking for designs. We'll be looking for budget. We'll be looking for a prose description. We'll be looking for a needs statement, why this is needed in the neighborhood at this time. We'll be looking for proof of community support. Is this something that 3 people want or 300? And has it been vetted with the neighborhood council or the community watch group or whoever? So, and that RFP will be, it will be really laid out. We want this to be simple and really with very clear directions so that you don't have to be an applicant from Trinity Financial or a CDC and really used to doing this. We want it to be accessible to anybody. And then once the applications come in, there'll be a week or 2 where we as administrative staff will sort them, figure them out, put them in piles for a park person to read, a housing person, preservation person to make sure that all the things that are needed are available. I assume that we will use both city staff, like in landmarks, parks, D&D. I'm also hoping that we'll set up some advisory groups of some expertise and just interest, and that's another form of civic engagement, involvement, who can look at some of these and prioritize. So there'll be some reviews that happen before the committee even gets the proposal, so that they can see that the Parks Department checked off that this was a real priority for them. And Landmarks has left a project kind of with a B grade or C grade because the property has not been designated as historically important in some way. So, you know, there'll be it's going to be a little bit of a complicated review process, partly because there's so many stakeholders and so many people that care deeply about this. But then it will come to the committee. They'll review the proposals for homework, they'll talk about them in a meeting, and at their next meeting, they'll vote to recommend a package, a slate of proposals that will go to the mayor and then come to you. That's as much as we know so far.
It's as thorough as it got, that's
And
good.
we're figuring it out. If I talk to you next week, it might be a little different, but that's where we are right now.
Thank you.
Great.
Counselor,
Very good, thank you.
just a couple of wrap-ups, too. Can the affordable housing bucket, so to speak, be used for ownership?
Absolutely.
Good.
And the city's very interested in increasing homeownership and addressing the wealth gap in the city and figuring out how to do that. And
Yeah,
the
I
money.
hope we do really look at that, and I'll just put this out there again, and it's a CDC program in association with Community Benefits from Harvard. Harvard
right, I know
put
this.
together a fund that the CDC can actually compete with investors, basically, to buy housing and then put a deed restriction on it to provide first-time home buyer opportunities. It seems to be working pretty well. There's been a few glitches, but I'd personally rather see more of that than any other kinds of just, subsidized housing.
Right,
Not
I
that we
think-
don't need it, but I think, we need also paths for people for home ownership.
Right,
And
no,
then-
I think it's a real priority, and I've actually talked to the Olson Brighton CDC folks and learned a lot about that program.
Yeah, it's a great
as a
program.
model for how we could, I don't know enough about the glitches, so it'd be good to hear about them at some point, but no, it's a huge priority at the city level. And if you look at the number of renters versus owners, there's a little bit of an imbalance in Boston, so we'd love to make that happen, especially in neighborhoods.
Great, and then parks, and you spoke to this earlier, Christine, with the, our suburban neighbors foregoing building affordable housing and buying open space. Obviously, Boston doesn't have a lot of open space to buy, there was, I think, an amendment to CPA several years ago where parks in particular were given the ability that they could actually do some kind of capital projects on parks,
Up until 2012, any park capital work that was done had to be on parks or open space land that was bought with CPA funding. And the 2012 amendment to the existing law changed that. So it can be absolutely on existing parks. So the playground at Ringer Park in your neighborhood could, or in your district, could be all renovated with CPA funds if it's not in the capital plan for the Parks Department for
I think
many
that's
years.
a crucial thing
It is.
for the city of Boston,
And
especially.
it helped get more cities to pass CPA because of that. Yeah.
Great. So with that, I'm good. Thank you very much. We're really excited for
Great.
the possibilities of what these funds can do for the residents of the city of Boston. I want to thank you for your testimony today, and I will be reporting this out tomorrow's meeting. Thank you. This hearing is
you.
adjourned.